Yeah, I'm excited.
I'd like to call,
We need you guys.
that's okay, Chris. I'd like to call to order the meeting of South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs, the April meeting, and I'm so glad to see so many people here. This is wonderful. Can I have the welcome of notice meeting statement? Ariel?
A news release announcing the date, time, and place of the April 19th, 2018 Commission meeting was mailed April 19th, 2018 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office, video conference locations, and on the website. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistance, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance.
Chris, invocation, please.
Let us pray. Lord, thank you for this beautiful spring day and the rebirth the season represents in our lives. We are especially grateful for all the citizens, staff, providers, and this commission who have gathered here today to collectively find solutions for our brothers and sisters who have physical and mental challenges to overcome. Lord, together we will serve as your hands and feet to give all of our consumers a life of meaning, purpose, good health, and safety. This is our calling. Lord, guide us as we make important decisions today, and let us never forget to love one another by serving one another. Finally, Lord, thank you for letting us live in a country where we can care for each other and for our citizens in need. Together, we can provide our time, talents, and resources to help those who need a hand up realize their own American dream. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. May I have the introductions of the guests? I'd like to start up the front, sir. No, I'm going to take that guy behind that screen. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ray Miller, DB Council. Ben Warner, DDSN.
Kathleen Lent, Aging Affair.
Dawn Darby, I'm representing Margie Williamson with Cyclone Partnership of Disability Organizations and also the Therapy Place.
Thank you. Thank you.
Julie Murphy, Department of Mental Health. Temporary.
Allison, DDSN, Coastal Center.
Coastal Center.
John Fishman, PD Regional Center.
Terry Preston, Legal Services, Carolina.
James, DDSN, Partition Research. Liz Lauren, DDSN.
Richard Johnson, Parents and Guardians Association, Coastal Center.
I'm Suzanne Johnson, Coastal Center Parents and Guardians in South Carolina PAD.
Morning, Kathleen Roberts with Center Parents Club and South Carolina PAD, and mother of two sons that were served 31 years by DDSN and have passed.
Nancy Hall, DDSN.
Randy Davis, Witness Center.
Jacqueline Weir, Witness Center staff.
Sylvia Superior, Witness Center staff. Alfred is Davidson, Chester, Marshall, Davidson Court.
Right here. Lady in the pink shirt, please. That's all right. Go ahead.
My name is Angela Green, and I represent the Babcock. I'm also with them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm Brett Parker from the Allendale Farm Board.
Stephanie Williams, Calhoun County DSN.
Hi, Moms, Calhoun County Disabilities and Special Needs Board.
Kathleen Northern, PNA.
Tom Ritter, DDSN. Dexter Austin, DDSN.
Tamara Hammonds, DSN.
Good morning, Ron Keith, Marion Dillon, DSN.
Angela Wright, DSN.
Virginia Curtin, Midland Center, and my daughter.
Megan Curtin.
Carlos Simmons, PNA.
Sherry Miser coming.
Fuller Warren, Backpack Center.
Judy Johnson, Babcock Center.
Good morning, DDSN, Kevin Yagobi.
Danny Davis, Office Division.
Kathleen
Rufus Brett, BDSN.
I'm Kelly Carabella. I'm a PhD student at USC in the Clinical Community Program and a LEND Fellow.
Wonderful.
Catherine Paget, Family Connection of South Carolina.
Dorothy Goodwin, Community Options.
Bruce Spalding, Brain Injury Association.
Sean Matisse, Sumter County DSN.
Wonderful. Welcome. So glad to have you all here. Can I have the adoption of the agenda? I need a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second or any discussion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approval of the minutes of March 15th, 2018 commission meeting.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
those in favor?
Aye.
Public input. Deborah McPherson.
I want to respond to a statement made by DDSN staff at last month's meeting in response to Ms. Muno's question regarding why individuals in other states can access residential HAP services when they reach 18 or 21 years of age, but individuals in South Carolina can't. DDSN staff responded that residential placement was restricted by the waiver to only those in critical need. The policy of offering residential HAP services to those on the critical needs list through the IDRD and HASKI waiver is the DDSN policy determined by DDSN, not CMS and/or the Home and Community-Based Waiver regulations. In fact, DDSN received approval from CMS and the IDRD waiver in 2017 to provide residential HAP services to over 8,000 individuals by year 5 of the waiver. The Commission approved residential contracts for 4,525 individuals at its June 2017 meeting, far less than what has been approved by CMS. What is most disturbing is that DDSN received state funding for 3 fiscal years in the amount of over $26 million in recurring funds to address the waiting list and spent significantly less than that amount for that purpose. The General Assembly was told by DDSN that residential services were needed for individuals served by aging caregivers. While funds were not being spent as directed by the General Assembly, 4.3% of the plans reviewed in the past 4 months by the new Waiver Administration Division have been reduced or denied to individuals receiving in-home and community-based services. Most of these services denied have been for respite, in-home support, and personal care. I continue to hear complaints that individual services continue to be reduced. The result of these DDSN Waiver Administration Division actions to deny in-home support services in disregard of the 2014 South Carolina Court of Appeals ruling that caps on home-based services violate the ADA when applied to persons who are at risk of institutionalization, prevent individuals with disabilities from remaining at home, and from individuals with disabilities in group homes from returning to their own homes. One criteria to be found eligible for home and community-based services is the person must be at risk for institutionalization. Following last month's commission meeting, I requested a written response to my 11 questions regarding the new Waiver Administration Division and the new assessment tool. I have not received a response to my questions, but Ms. Beck and I are to meet after today's meeting. My final remarks pertain to the CMS final rule. CMS final rule requires that an independent face-to-face assessment of needs be conducted by an individual who is independent, meets provider qualification, and is free of conflict of interest using a person-centered process for each individual determined to be eligible for home and community-based benefit. The assessment is to be conducted in consultation with the individual and, if applicable, the individual's authorized representative, and include the opportunity to identify other persons to be consulted, such as, but not limited to, the individual's spouse, family, guardian, and treating and consulting health and support professionals responsible for the individual's care. The independent assessment of need must be conducted at least every 12 months and is needed when the individual's support needs or circumstances change significantly to revise the service plan. One of my duties when I worked at DDSN was to conduct the training of independent facilitators for person-centered planning through the University of Minnesota. When I left employment with DDSN in April 2002, there were over 100 independent individuals trained that individuals with disabilities and their families could choose to facilitate their person-centered plans. When I checked the DDSN website last week, there were only 6 independent facilitators listed for the entire state. I question how it is considered conflict-free if a service provider doesn't provide case management or develop the person-centered plan for the same person in cases where the case manager and the person facilitating the person-centered plan are employed by the same provider who also manages the person's finances and provides the services. I also question how staff in the Waiver Administration Division reviewing service plans who have had no face-to-face interactions with the individual with a disability and their family address the issue of conflict-free case management. On May 9, 2017, CMS extended the date for states to demonstrate compliance with the home and community-based settings requirements to March 17, 2022. The provisions of person-centered planning or conflict-free case management have not been postponed. Providers have expressed concern that DDSN has already revised its residential standards and Alliant is already citing providers for items like co-location of facilities and fencing. I don't know about you, but the majority of homes in my neighborhood have fences for pets and for added security. A fence in a residential setting is not necessarily a red flag. Our president lives in a home with a fence and security guards. Does that mean that he's not a member of our community? The question is whether he has opportunities and choice in leaving his home to visit and have people visit him. My review of the CMS final rules and fencing seem to be whether fencing is present at a non-residential setting, not a residential setting. Justification for fencing, additional supervision, and other supports will need to be addressed in the individual's person-centered plan. I've lived with my child for 34 years. For the first 17 years of my life, she was off the charts. She was functioning at such a high level that she would have been able to make her own health care and life decisions, live and work in the community with very limited assistance, and tell me and others if she was being abused. However, after becoming sick with a very rare autoimmune disease 17 years ago, that is not the case now. Safety precautions and assistance that were not needed before are needed now. To ignore these needs would be neglectful on my part. To deny and or restrict my right as her mother to assist her now in making healthcare decisions according to state law or be notified should she be abused should be questioned. I've contacted CMS for guidance regarding these matters because I do not believe some of the changes made to DDSN directives are in keeping with the requirements of the CMS final rule. It is odd that DDSN is quickly implementing changes to its directive standards and other measures to address its interpretation of the requirements of the CMS final rule, while it has drug its feet for years to address the clear waiver requirement and provisos of the General Assembly to allow providers to directly bill Medicaid. Direct provider billing would also address some of the issues of conflict of interest currently present in DDSN system. I would encourage the Commission, providers, families, and consumers with disabilities to ask for clarification from CMS when DDSN and or DHHS interpretation of the CMS final rules seem contrary to state and federal law, common sense, and most importantly, the safety of the individual with a disability. I would also encourage the Commission to ensure that the requirements of conflict-free case management are in place. I question that our state is currently meeting that requirement. I gave Sandra copies of the CMS final rules that pertain to a couple of these issues for you to read what the final rule actually says.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Commissioners update? Anybody? Nope. No commissioners update. Pat, State Director's report.
Okay. Good morning. I want to start out with a sad news for me personally, but I want to just recognize Dave Goodell over here, that handsome young man. He's going to retire at the end of June after 22 years. May? Hey! Hi! I swear he told me June. And I've been wishing it, but Dave has been, I call him my E.F. Hutton. He knows so much about this outfit. He understands the complexity of which we operate in. He understands all the nuances that Deborah brought up, or things that you're trying to weave into the system without choking the system, without overrunning the system, and it takes a great steady hand and experience to make all that happen. Dave, I appreciate your advice to me, but let's give Dave a round. Lisa Weeks, she's the interim Associate State Director for Administrations. I thank Lisa for taking that job. And we have Liz Lamont. Liz, where you at? She's our new HR Director. So let's give a
Wonderful.
round of applause for both those ladies. They're very hard. Last but not least, Judy Johnson's in her usual chair back there. She'll be retiring, her retirement functions tonight. 4 years in the business, so let's give. I spoke with HHS 2 days ago, and they have, I've been talking about this each month, I really believe in this time. They have been trying to secure a subject matter expert to start the rate study and the payment system, and they have guaranteed me that stakeholder meetings will start in May. And again, for this type of complexity and this type of money involved in negotiations, they finally got them in the starting gate, and we will start in May. So I think it's a good sign to address a lot of the issues that we're talking about. The big part of my 4 minutes that I have up here is, and I'll take questions, I'm going to give you an update on the Adult Healthcare Consent Act. Last spring and summer, I was sitting back there and I was understanding all the legal discussions, and quite frankly, it was very confusing and challenging. But now that I've been given the ball to move it downfield, I've immersed myself in it. It is a complex area to look at. But I just want to tell everybody where we're at, where we're going. I know people had a lot of interest in it, and I certainly want to give the new commissioners and other people here a little background so I can tell you where we were and where we are and where I see our steps going forward. Prior to June 1st of 2016, DDSN had 2 state statutes that gave us our authority and priority to serve as make healthcare decisions for consumers who are unable to consent. We had one statute which was called the Rights of Clients with Intellectual Disability, which gave us our authority and priority. And in there it said your priority is number 8 over in another statute, which is the Adult Healthcare Consent Act. So as of May 30th, 2016, the world was perfect. Complete clarity. On June 1st of 2016, there was the Adult Healthcare Consent Act was amended. It added some other family members, grandparents, and during that amendment process, our number 8 line got eliminated. And so that obviously needed to be addressed. In the spring of 17, we worked with a House representative who drafted a bill and submitted it, and we put ourselves in there as the 4th priority. After much discussion, it was clear that that was not the right thing to do, and that bill was stopped. That bill was not acted upon in this session, and it will die a natural death in 2 or 3 weeks at the end of this legislative session. So we're still with the June 1st of 2016 bill where we are, our number 8 has been eliminated. During the session, I think we made all the hand carried letters and briefings, and there was support, but it never really got anywhere. It just, and I can't, at the very end of my briefing, I'll give you some of my thoughts as to why it's not getting the traction that maybe we think it should get. And so where we are, and to me, from an administrator, an operator, is like, okay, what does that mean to us? How does that affect our decisions? I looked at the commission meeting last summer, and there was discussion, and the commission had a vote that was clear as a bell. We are going to be last by policy, and whenever statute gets done, we want to be last in priority list so that we are the last entity standing after all family members have not been located. From a legal standpoint, last summer, our legal basis to continue our authority was that number 3 on the Adult Healthcare Consent Act, which has always been there for years, was worded a little bit differently. It's basically saying an entity with priority. A plain reading of that statute is we do have priority. Our statute over here with the rights of clients with ID says we have a priority. So based on legal analysis It was, we still have authority and priority as number 3. I asked Tana to give me a written legal opinion, and she very compelling to me. And there's another legal basis for it as well. I could argue strongly that we're number 8 or 10 based on a little bit of what do you call it? Legal statutory construction. So where we are today, from an administrative standpoint, is we have a legal basis. It needs to be cleaned up. I think if you're signing your name, and I checked with all the facility administrators, and thank you for understanding where we're at. And all of them have, they're executing their mission. Each have about 6 to 9 consumers of which they have that authority of which they use. And they use it for medical needs primarily, but any of those needs you need. And yet, I guess I'm wondering why I didn't get traction. And why isn't more people excited about this? And the only thing I can piece together is from somebody that's not within our service community, and you say, Adult Health Consent Act, our line has been taken off. Well, that's designed for a doctor. When there's an emergency, I go through the family, and then if I can't find any family, it goes back to the doctor. So if you're missing one, it's like, okay, the sky's not falling. But for our population, it matters, because we have ICFs, we have people that when you are determined not to be able to consent and 2 doctors sign it, that document sits in your file. And we rely a lot of future medical decisions on that same document. So everybody else looks at it as a one-time deal. We look at it as a document that we rely on for if they go to the dentist and they have to put them asleep, they use them. So it really helps the normal course of business. So I don't think they understand the need that we have in the normal course of business. And I look at this situation as, yes, we have legal authority, but I'm a big believer in Murphy's Law, and that we have to get it cleared up. And right now, my strategy is twofold. To me, I think the best way where we can get the most immediate horsepower is through our House Oversight Committee. We have 4 House members who have been engaged for a year. They're really interested. We've provided them all the legislation that we want to clean up. And what happens is at the end of these oversight hearings, one of the main reasons they do it is to clean up the law every 7 years. So they'll take all our suggestions, and then they'll come in with a cleanup bill to clean up all the statutes. I think that is where we have the most interest and energy to get what I'd call some bandwidth to get it in there. So that's where I'm going to put my energies. Every House meeting with that group. It's not to say that other members were dismissive of us. The pace of business and to push a piece of legislation. If it was a proviso, they'd push it in tomorrow. Getting a statute across, it just didn't happen this time. And I wish it worked, but they have their priorities, and they were sorry it couldn't move, but and that's where we're at. So I feel like we can't stop. I know if I'm signing my name on the line, I want 1,000% assurance, and we shouldn't stop until we get there. So, any questions?
Is this controversial in some way?
It was. I think on its face, it has that immediate, like, we're ahead of families, and I think we solved that problem. That bill was stopped. That bill is dead. It sat there in a little subcommittee off the judiciary this year, and we had talked to them early in the year saying nobody wants that bill, and it's not going anywhere. So it will die a natural death. So I think the first thing was not to even create the appearance that we want to be higher. Our legal basis now, it's a little, I don't know if it's awkward to explain, but I think, again, legal basis, I'll pass it to the attorneys among this. You could argue, I could argue over 3, 8, or 10. Regardless of what I argue, we're never going to exercise anything but the 10th priority.
I guess I'm just not understanding. If our ask is to come in as last priority, that seems like a technical cleanup to a bill.
It is.
Would that be controversial? Why?
Well, they moved it to the 3rd spot, so ahead of
So
some.
that's when it was controversial.
Right.
That's right.
So family members were,
Yes.
in 2016, DDSN was number 8, I think, and then they moved it to number 3. And family members were like, whoa, why have you
Yeah.
done that? So
I-
this
I
is
get
now
that.
cleaning up.
I
And that, it was
get that
just,
piece. I just don't know why they wouldn't, if we then agreed to take last priority, or that we wanted to be last priority.
I think it's just has to do with it. It has to be a bill.
I think killing the number 3 thing took a lot of energy out of the system.
Yeah.
And so people are, now we're back to normal, and we just got to clean up something up. It didn't get cleaned up,
They just
but we can't treat it as a cleanup bill.
legislation.
Okay.
They didn't ask us as a commission, do we want to get moved up? But when the word got out that suddenly DDSN was moved up to 3, it was something that we as a commission felt like we needed to put a statement out there. And that's why we specifically said, no, we don't want to be that high up. We want to be the ones of last resort. And I think that sort of calmed a lot of stress down. But there was a lot of controversy in terms of trying to follow the law as it was being proposed. And a lot of that got out there. A lot of people were very, very concerned about that change. That's when it got controversial. It had been fine for years, and then suddenly it was controversial because of that potential change.
I think all that's died down. Now it's just, we got to just do the
You just
routine
gotta
cleanup.
clean it up.
The last thing I want to talk about is just briefly, I know I'm overusing my minutes up,
That's
is
okay, you're fine.
before Dave leaves in May now, maybe that's why you told me June so you could leave. The to-do list was done. We are going to, again, we have to have a written plan to present to you guys. But we're looking at opening 6 beds in Midlands for men, 6 beds in PD for women in the regional centers. And we're going to use them for what we consider short-term stabilization for people in the community. Like right now, this really is driven by the need. When this came up, we looked at it. At the point we looked at it is there's always 14 or 15 people on the critical list that literally are homeless or in jail. And so we got to do something. And then, the other issue is, and again, as I sit here, I become greater appreciation for the dynamics of the business we're in, is when a provider takes a higher risk person, there's a lot of things to consider. And I think if we can guarantee them a fallback position, and our model is going to be based on, we're going to have 6 beds, but our goal is going to keep only occupy 4 at any given time, so that at any given time we have capacity to absorb. So if we get to our limit of 4, we're going to be like, they're trying, anybody who can rotate out will rotate out. We just got to have that capacity. And then I think maybe we'll have a little bit greater buy-in by some providers to take higher risk consumers, because we'll have to give them some level of, I think we just need that little bit of, I call it working capital, to bridge that crisis gap between our list and the residential settings. And the General Assembly's been really good to us over the last 3 or 4 years. Our critical list has actually gone down 30 people in the last year, but you still can't, there's 15 people every night in under a bridge or in a jail or somewhere. And our goal is to get after that issue.
Great. Thrilled to hear that. Thank you very much. Now we're going to have the State Director Search Committee update. Vicki Thompson, are you with me?
I'm here. Thank you, Eva.
Okay.
On March 15th, the search committee met for the first time to begin reviewing applications for the state director position. We'd also learned that a couple of commissioners have been approached by people who didn't know about the position and were interested in applying. So after some discussion based on those inquiries, the committee is recommending that we reopen the application process for 30 days. Then we will reconvene in May and look again at the applicants and decide who we want to interview, and then start that process shortly thereafter. So our recommendation from our first meeting is that we reopen the application process for 30 days.
Okay, I need a motion. She's made a motion. Do I have a second?
Coming out of committee, we don't.
Okay, great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. The ayes have it, and it'll be reopened promptly.
I'll have you something today.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, good. All right, on to the disability. Miss Margie Williamson.
Good morning.
Thank you.
I'm not Margie. She sends her regrets that she couldn't be with us today. She had a meeting that conflicted with this. So as vice chair of the South Carolina Partnership of Disability Organizations, I come to you and say thank you so much for your support of Disability Advocacy Day and for allowing me the opportunity to share how that day went. My name is Donna Darby, for the notes, if we want to change Margie. I am, like I said, the vice chair of the Partnership of Disability Organizations and the executive director of the Therapy Place. So the Therapy Place is one of the partners of this organization. But perhaps most importantly, I am the mom to Cooper, my son who's 15 and has cerebral palsy. He got me into this. So this is my first time at a commission meeting, so I hope I'm doing okay. And now I know it's the place to be though, so I'll back to house today. So Disability Advocacy Day, this was our 29th annual event this year, and it was held March 7th, of course, at the State House. We were overwhelmed with the response. We registered 587 in attendance, including self-advocates, parent advocates, friends, caretakers, professionals, and countless volunteers. And I should also mention Brianna Spalding is our secretary of the South Carolina Partnership of Disability Organizations and also with Brain Injury Alliance, one of our partners. So I want to mention her as well. She helped give me these numbers for today. Of those who were registered, we counted 20 counties were represented. They provided zip codes and registered at tables. Let's see, where am I? Okay, this year's theme was promoting community engagement. And so with that effort, we not only had the partners of the disability organizations present and displaying their information and interacting with the participants, we also invited vendors. And we had 11 vendors participate. Easter Seals, some of the early intervention agencies. The goal for them was to interact with folks to let them know what they were doing in the community, and then also, being supportive, of course, for the day. A special treat was having South Carolina State Treasurer Curtis Loftus present with us. He shared information about the new ABLE savings account for our people with disabilities, and we look forward to next year, 2019, the 30th annual Disability Advocacy Day, which we're going to try to not get even further out of the park, being the 30th. We also, at the day, had the special honor of awarding a very special lady who is with us today, Miss Angela Green, with Advocate of the Year Award. Angela, you want to join me? She was already given the award. I think she may have brought it with her, so
Yay.
I don't get to present it again, but. Angela is a hard worker and strong self-advocate. I look forward to my own son following in her footsteps eventually. She is a 2000 graduate of the Partners in Policymaking program, and she is our 2018 Advocate of the Year. And I'll turn it over to you. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm a lady of short words, and I just want to say, I just give God thanks for this award, and I just think, I'm just grateful. Well, I wouldn't be the person that I am without the people that have been my light, and that's how I became the light. And I just want to thank them because they helped me. This is their award too for instilling all their hard work, and it's just great. And I always say it's about love, and that's what it is about for me. And I just say thanks again.
Thank you so much. Daniel Davis, it is Autism Awareness Month.
Say good morning, and we certainly appreciate you giving us a few minutes of your time. I apologize for my voice. I'm having some trouble with pollen this morning. To that end, I'll make sure that my comments are brief. We certainly don't want to do anything that detracts from the time from item 11J. We want to make sure that we give them the time that it deserves. typically during these meetings, you get hit with a lot of numbers. Important though they may be, I've decided not to inundate you with a lot of numbers, but to instead share some important facts. Some of them are not necessarily autism related. In 1984, I started working with the programs for individuals with autism as a direct support staff in a 6-bedroom group home. There were also 2 rooms that were set aside specifically for respite, and those rooms were typically occupied about 45 weeks during the year. At that time, autism services, as I knew them, were a part of the Department of Mental Health, and we were housed in a division that served the elderly population. Now, that's a big contrast from where we are today, but as you know it, things change over time. In 1984, people flocked to the movies to see The Karate Kid and The Terminator, or they stayed at home and watched Family Ties or The Dukes of Hazzard. In 2018, people went to the theater to see The Black Panther or A Quiet Place, or they stayed at home and watched This Is Us and The Big Bang Theory. In 1984 was the year that the CD player was introduced, and Apple launched the Mac computer, and Hulk Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik for the first WWF championship.
That's really important.
In 2018, people use a virtual assistant known as Alexa to do everything from reading to their kids, to playing music on demand and operating all of the smart devices in their house. In 1984, my initial training, we were told that the prevalence of autism was 1 in 10,000 live births. And what was known then as DMR served approximately 6,800 individuals across all disability categories. Today, autism spectrum disorder occurs in 1 in 68 live births. The studies show that boys are 4 to 5 times greater to have autism than girls. Numerically, that's 1 in 42 for boys and 1 in 189 for girls. And the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs provides services to almost 11,000 individuals with autism alone. And that number almost doubles the number that the then DMR served in 1984. To some degree, how autism is defined has changed. Prior to 2013, autism was recognized as 4 distinct subcategories: Asperger's syndrome, childhood disintegrative disorder, pervasive developmental disorder, and autism. With the update of the publication of Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, all of those subcategories were put into one umbrella term known as autism spectrum disorder. Now, while the definition has been updated, the characteristics that we see in autism have not changed. Most individuals with autism have difficulties in 3 core areas: social interaction, communication, and the need for repetitiveness. From the socialization aspect, children with ASD do not engage in the typical give and take of everyday interactions. They may not gaze at faces, turn when they hear voices, and I think the one that is most disheartening to parents is the lack of smiles. From a communication aspect, children may have delays in using gestures, speaking, or the language may come in the form of echolalia, which is repeating what one has heard verbatim. From a repetitive behaviors, there's a strong need to maintain routines and display of repetitive behaviors. Most common that people see is hand flapping and rocking. There may also be a preoccupation with unusual objects, such as tree service trucks or hospital gurneys. Or there's an ability to recall with great accuracy facts or details on the topic of their interest. So in closing, most organizations don't speak of a cure for ASD, but instead they reference the importance of early diagnosis and intervention through research-based and peer-reviewed treatments and therapies. It could be something as simple as a social story to prepare someone for an upcoming change in their schedule, or it could be something that's more technical, such as ABA therapy. The key is to find the intervention that best works for the children, for the individual, and what improves their quality of life. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dan, you want to talk about House Bill 3790, please?
Yes, ma'am. Double header. After several years of hard work by advocates, the South Carolina General Assembly passed a bill known as Ryan's Law in 2007. With that passage, South Carolina became, I believe, the second state that required some level of insurance coverage for medically necessary therapy for individuals with autism. The key term there is some level. At the time of its passage, large group health plans, that is plans that serve over 50 employees, and the state employee health plan were covered under the provisions of Ryan's Law. Excluded from that provision were small group health plans, that is those that covered less than 50 employees, and the individual plans. So with the passage of Ryan's Law, it was viewed as a momentous success, but the exclusions adversely impacted a large segment of South Carolinians. To that end, almost immediately, the advocates began to seek coverage for the excluded group. Those actions led to the introduction of Bill 3790. Now, I won't take time to go through the bill's entire journey beyond this point. Last session, 3790 was passed by the Senate, but not in the House. This year, the antithesis has happened. 3790 was passed in the House and is now stuck in the Senate. And at this point, I would cede the remainder of my time to Commissioner Una, given her familiarity with this bill, and ask that she share some of her knowledge with the group and the commission.
Thank you, Daniel. Yes, so as many of you know, I worked very hard on the original bill that passed in 2007. And as a matter of political compromise, it did exclude those two types of plans, small group plans and individual plans, because at that time, we didn't know what the cost impact on insurance premiums was going to be. And so in order to be reasonable, the autism community said, okay, if you make the large group insurance plans cover evidence-based treatment, including ADA, and the state employee health plan cover it, we'll wait a few years, see what the cost looks like, get some claims data, and then if it's not making the premium skyrocket, we'll come back and add the individual plans and the small group plans. We now have that claims data from the state employee health plan. This coverage to ensure that children with autism get coverage for evidence-based treatment, including ABA, impacts premiums less than 50 cents per member per month.
Wonderful.
So that's way less than what was projected at the time. I don't really even think I know any South Carolinians who wouldn't be willing to pay 50 cents extra a month so that people with autism could get the treatment that their doctors are recommending. So that's what House Bill 3790 does, is it goes back and picks up those two types of insurance plans that were excluded in 2007. As Daniel mentioned, the prior version of the bill passed the Senate during the last session. It's passed the House during this session. It is now residing in the Senate Banking and Insurance Committee, or specifically in the Insurance Subcommittee. It has been residing there for a year, and the community has been unable to get the chair to schedule a vote on the bill. There is widespread support for the bill throughout the Senate, including on the subcommittee. 3 of the 5 senators on the subcommittee have committed to voting for it. But we can't get it on the agenda. So I believe it's very much in this department's interest to see that individuals with autism get the care that their doctors are prescribing as children and throughout their adult lives. I mean, they will come to us less needy if they're able to access this care. And so, I'd like to hear if you guys have any thoughts on this, but I'd like to see us take a stance and let the Senate know that we have an interest in seeing that insurance companies in South Carolina can no longer discriminate against individuals with autism by excluding the primary treatments for autism.
So who's the holdup? Who's the chairman? We need to
Who's the
call
chair?
him.
You want me to name names?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm
Well,
asking.
I mean, if we don't know, we can't call him.
So,
And their phone numbers too.
okay, well,
You go.
okay. The chair of the insurance subcommittee is Senator Sean Bennett from the Somerville area. And the chair of the full Banking and Insurance Committee is Senator Ronnie Cromer. And I can assure you that they are hearing from advocates daily. Senator Bennett has indicated that he is opposed to mandates generally. But I got to tell you, this was mandated. State employees have this coverage. If you're a state employee and you have a child with autism, you get these insurance benefits. And that was mandated by the legislature. So I think that bridge has already been crossed. I understand the philosophical objection to mandates, but that bridge has already been crossed. And the legislature mandated this coverage 11 years ago, and I think we should go back and pick up. It's about 350,000 people in South Carolina who have this type of insurance plan, and it flat out says in the insurance policy, exclusion, and it names ABA, for instance, and those families cannot get coverage. So what happens then is those families go to Medicaid. And, you know, as you guys are aware, we're already having difficulty reimbursing the Medicaid providers at an adequate rate. And it just makes it worse when you've got even more people. You've got this extra 350,000 person pool trying to tap into Medicaid when those people are paying premiums for private health insurance. Why are we asking them to try to get care from the government when they're privately insured?
Mm-hmm. Pat, what else can we do?
I think it's, you know, call your legislature, or we can make a formal,
Write a letter?
I mean, can we make a formal motion? Can
I
we-
think a commission, as a commission, we should write a letter and send it to both the chairman of the committee and the subcommittee.
Or all five of them? Just bring it out and vote on it. I mean, you know, if it dies there, then we'll know.
That's right, but let
it be voted on.
Let it be voted on, right. I agree, and, you know, the chairman doesn't even have to vote for it. If he's against it, vote against it,
Yeah.
but let it be voted on.
Absolutely.
That's the democratic process.
We need everybody out here calling.
So.
You got their names.
Senator Sean Bennett and Senator Ronnie Cromer, and it's urgent because the session is winding up. The Senate Insurance Subcommittee met yesterday, and
Can we do a resolution?
Can we do a resolution?
The reason why we can't.
Why don't we
Today,
do a
vote.
resolution towards that? Can I have a motion for a resolution?
So moved.
Okay, we have,
second?
so you'll put together a resolution
will
and
do
get
it.
it to all, I'd like it to go to all five members
Well, I
of
was
that
gonna say,
committee.
we probably need to define what the resolution is.
I'll get you a
so
draft.
we
How
get
about that?
All right, yeah, get us a draft
Yeah.
and we can all look at it. It definitely give it to the two of you because you know more about it. I- You know, just.
Right.
But in
heard
general,
about
we're talking about resolution in favor of 3790.
Right.
And urging them to bring it to a vote.
Yes,
That's
sir.
the
Bring it
core
to
of
a
the
vote.
resolution. So,
And I think it needs to go to all five of them so they all know that this has come out.
It's important to us.
It's very important to us and
Okay.
that is the state agency, or the commission, I guess.
we need to have it done
Yeah.
soon because the session's getting ready to end, right? Yeah.
House bill.
Okay, why don't we get it together and just have like, you sign it, commission.
Absolutely.
And that way we're not passing it around and getting everybody's signature.
I'll get
It's perfect.
Okay?
I think,
As soon as you pass it.
I think we need that.
Okay? Well,
We have a
so I
motion.
have a motion. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Vicki, you there?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Okay. It passed and Pat says he'll take care of it and get it done.
Take care of it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And Daniel, thank you very much.
Sandra, what do you need from me?
I just was wanting to know who second.
I seconded.
Yeah. Chris was first and
Yeah, thank you.
second. All right, Susan Beck, the waiting list reduction project report.
Hello again.
In tab 4, we have the waiting list reduction project report for you all. And I just have one quick slide, which displays the top portion of that report. If you'll note, we had a request last month to kind of do a little addendum to the new format. You'll also see critical needs numbers in there. This time it was for a 9-month period, so you can definitely see some change there over 9 months as well. But I just wanted to take a moment and highlight, obviously, a continuing need from the agency is to get people enrolled in waiver services. It's very important. A continuing need is also supporting case management to do that. As we know, that system is very challenged. Manpower issues, process issues, there are many. And so we know the case managers in the field are working very, very hard, and I think some of these numbers can demonstrate that. If you look at under the IDRD column and then focus on the numbers highlighted in the 3rd and 4th rows, I'm looking at the 1,056 and subtracting the number above it, 879. You get roughly 300 in a 3-month period of slots that have been able to move. And so what that tells us is at that rate, you know, we estimate that we'll have, we can enroll about 1,200 people in a year. But as we've stated publicly, it's very difficult to keep up with the funding that we received in the past because of just this process of having multiple waivers with people moving from community supports waiver to the more expanded array of services in IDRD, some of the process requirements with redocumenting Medicaid eligibility, with redoing level of care, all those process improvements that we're working on with DHHS will have a good effect for that, but these numbers really, I think, impress upon us why we're having difficulty moving forward, and really points to the stressors on the case management system. So I wanted to highlight those for you all, and then certainly take any questions. We'll continue to work on this. We've had very promising, as I've said, we have great approvals from DHHS on these process improvements we're doing to speed up waiver enrollment. We're at the point where we're finalizing some of those processes. I think we've got about 1 more meeting, and we should be able to move forward with implementation. But then again, we're going to be putting another change within the case management system, and Pat will be reporting on some more changes. So I hate to use the word brittle because that sounds dramatic, but it's a brittle mix of, you know, how much to stress the system and how much to change, and then people really do need services, and the waiver enrollment is key to that happening. So I wanted to just bring that to your awareness and know we're making very concentrated efforts.
Yeah.
All right. Susan? You want to do the HC? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So going down on what's on the bottom, on the length of time, the waiting list.
Yes.
We had a little bit of a bump up on the community supports, not back up to really bad numbers, but up from where our low was back in July of 17. Is that just as a result of some of the changes that we made in terms of when we shift our emphasis to try to get more people on that?
Yes, exactly.
Correspondingly, we've had a nice drop on the IDRD. So that's we've been putting more emphasis there.
Right, exactly. You got it right, because remember, we kind of overextended ourselves while we were waiting for the IDRD waiver renewal to come through, and then we've been pulling those back.
Are we expecting an adjustment sort of back down once we had to get over that hump because of all those problems? Are we expecting an adjustment sort of back down on that, do we think, or do we?
Well,
I'm not asking you to commit to anything 100%.
I'm not really sure about that. I mean, I would hate to speculate. I'm not sure that we've gotten that far yet. I think that we're about, according to the numbers I got this morning, we're about 300 in from those 750 slots. So we've got a ways to go, because remember, it's been months that we've been pulling back and pulling back. That 2-to-1 ratio. So there are many factors in play, and many factors moving ahead in the system that would have to come into consideration. Funding, of course, one. But secondly, what's going on with cases?
That's fair enough. And I would just confirm, that's what I was just confirming that change is a result of a policy change that we put in.
But it will, we have approval for the change that will speed it up, where when you go from a CS waiver to ID waiver, you have to start over again. So right away, we're wasting 600 slots a year. So we'll double capacity once we flip that switch.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted.
Look forward to doubling capacity. Thank you. Any other questions?
Which, on the estimated cost to eliminate waivers, remind me, but wasn't it at 17 million last month? Or the month before? I'm just trying to remember. Seems like a big jump just in one month.
Well, the waiting list continues to grow every month.
Right.
At least people can enter the waiting list every month, and so there's an effect there with that number growing in the calculations. Yes, Pat?
It's also effect of the, we measure the turnover rate, and if it goes from like 0.41 to 0.45, that will affect the math a little bit. So that's just an estimation.
All right, thank you.
Susan, you want to continue?
I'd love to.
The HCBC final rule update?
Okay, so I wanted to provide for you all an update on all of the actions the agency and providers are taking regarding trying to reach compliance with the home community settings rule. And so I'll just provide a few slides for you on that. But it's important to know kind of the history as we start out with a lot of our stories here. By looking a little bit at some of the regulatory language. And so just bear with me for a second. So this is akin to what I think in education was the movement with least restrictive environment, with really doing individualized planning. I know a lot of you all have education field background, so I'll kind of frame it that way. But the idea of the regulation was to enhance the quality of the services provided. That's the HCBS in that line. By providing protections, looking at providing services in those integrated settings, and ensuring individual rights. So we know in the field of disability services, it doesn't matter what age you are, the whole idea is you should take the life of a typical person who doesn't have a diagnosis, who doesn't have a disability, and then look at that and try to make the person's life with a disability as typical as possible, matching that, right? And so that's what this regulation does. But it allows for, while preserving those rights and ensuring quality, for concessions to be made based on the impact of the disability. So one of the examples today, and Ms. McPherson gave great examples about fencing, and I'll just address that quickly. What a provider would do to make sure you're enhancing quality with that is look at the individual needs of the person, and certainly if there are elopement risks or significant judgment issues, or their supervision assessment indicates that they need more controls in place, then you would justify those. And then that would still be compliant with the regulation. So that message I want to make sure that we understand. So we're taking the person in the center, and then we're assessing their needs, and we're wrapping the right amount of supports in place with that. And these concepts are not new to South Carolina. I just pulled some of the headers from the South Carolina Code of Laws, Title 44 Health, Chapter 26, entitled, as Pat read earlier, Compliance with Intellectual Disability. So the dates on that refer back to 1992. There were some updates in 2011, some language changes from taking out mental retardation, putting in intellectual disability a little bit later than that. But I've just kind of put in bold and underlined for you some of those key words that match up very well to the HCBS. So you're seeing rights, you're seeing how to address limitations on rights, you're seeing rights to physical exercise, which to me implies some choice. Words like least restrictive appropriate care and habilitation, and then again, of course, rights. So these aren't all the headers, but they're just a few to kind of make the point. So this isn't new to us. Our providers have, for, as I count, 26 years, been familiar with these kinds of things at the very minimum, and have been to a certain level implementing them. When you just pull a couple of those sections, I've highlighted those words again, and I want this to kind of ring a bell as you get questions and hear things about the final rule. Receiving visitors, that's a key item we talk about. Keeping and spending a reasonable sum of money, so having control of your own resources, making decisions about those as you're assessed to be able to do them. Opportunities to select, make choices, having privacy, limitations imposed on exercising rights by the client and reasons for limitations. That goes back to that kind of construct that I talked about earlier. Start with the typical situation, assess need, and then match it to issues of safety and health, which is contrary to making decisions based on sheer efficiency, business models, and convenience, right? Really that person's own concept. So again, it's in the code. And it's been there. And then just, I'll quickly go through this one, but back to the least restrictive environment issue again. And making sure that, I call it the just right amount of services are being provided. Not too much, not too little, really making sure that that is an individualized decision. So we have a history, we have the connection, we're familiar with it. And I think looking at this analysis of the PCG state level site assessment data kind of paints that picture a little bit, because it would be really difficult, just theoretically, to think about all these concepts being brand new and foreign and that different and still reach 72% overall compliance, right? There are some things in place, some things are going right. And so there is this kind of foundational work that's being done that obviously we want to enhance it. We may never get to 100%, that's sort of unrealistic in human services, but we need to get up into the 80s, absolutely.
Let me jump in here. Does everybody understand what the PCG data is?
I can explain that.
Just how many houses we went to, and it's very compelling.
So, and I have that number. There were, I think, about 1,700 to 1,700, I have to go back and look at the exact document in my file, individual residential assessments, and we're just focusing kind of on residential now. So this is part of the federal requirements that states do site assessments. And so they looked at all residential settings, they looked at a sample of some of the SLPs because they're very connected and they've got some duplication. And they asked questions based on what the state developed for them to ask, this PCG group. And they focus on all these, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 areas. And so we've kind of collapsed those from our state level data and really developed kind of a composite. But you can see as you look through these things, that answer, is that better? The areas where you see low percentages are focused on things like rights and choice. Okay, so that will be the area that obviously we need to provide the most support to providers on to make sure that they really change that kind of philosophy of how services are being provided. This agency's done well. I know it's been probably 25 years since we've been talking about person-centered planning. And so that concept is also in place, but that fits very well with improving people's rights and choices. So we will continue to do that. So what the final rule is doing is taking the implementation that was happening with the state code requirements that was kind of being done at varying degrees. And then in 2014, when the regulation passed, it helped provide more guidance to states to stop implementing it in varying degrees, but to implement it more consistently. And so that's where we're headed. As we work to support providers, we've asked them on several occasions, what are some of the hot topics, the issues that you need the most support on? And the items in bold would reflect the ones that we'll be addressing first. Co-location, obviously, there's a lot of talk about that. And I think since probably 2016, we've had a more relaxed message from CMS about what they were required for co-location. So co-location is referring to properties that have isolating or institutional quality about them because they're clustered or located adjacent. So our state kind of parameter for that, as we've been able to kind of iron it out, looking at guidance, we'll be focusing on adjacent properties. Adjacent meaning touching, property lines touching. Now that could be a non-residential program to a residential program, or a residential program to another residential program. We do have, because of just decisions made at the time, no fingers being pointed, but we do have several situations in our state where there are clusters of homes that were purchased, agencies supported it, but that was 30 years ago. And so these rules were in place. The idea was moving people from institutions to the community and making them more integrated into community life, but there were not parameters on how integrated. You know, it wasn't focused on not having two houses that were right next to each other. And so now we've kind of got that parameter. So as I talk a little bit more, as we go through the next couple slides, I'll talk about how we'll mitigate that. But co-location is an issue. Folks have issues just kind of thinking through the philosophy of how to preserve the rights of people in a house if one of the folks that live there has dietary restrictions. And that could be diabetes, or it could be something much more complicated. And so it just takes some careful planning. We're not saying, you know, go to the extremes, but really that kind of message from CMS, from the federal entity, has really softened. And we're able to pull examples from other states as far as their technical assistance, as far as their kind of decision making, look at their plans, what CMS has been willing to approve, and really go on that standing. And so that's where a lot of our guidance is coming. So we will continue to provide support to providers to address these issues. In April, we'll be doing some of those initial calls. We've also already shared a volume of resources. Because we have a lot of time, but we do have a timeline in place. And we're assured through working with DHHS that if there are some intermediate timelines that we need to flex, we can do those. The hard stop timelines right now are really March 17th, 2022 at the bottom, and then December 31st, 2018. So we're moving forward on the issues that are more programmatic, and then slowing down a little bit on with the March 17, 2022 deadline on those residential issues, because we know co-location is a harder thing to mitigate. And then also we know day programming has received a lot of attention. So we continue to provide supports, but there is time, and we have some mitigation strategies to reach compliance. So in your binders, you have a commission advisement that has some of our analysis regarding the requirement about settings that isolate, which subset of that really focuses on co-location. And so what I just pulled this from there, but 63% of the non-residential today and the residential settings appear to lack any issues concerning proximity and isolation. And that's what those parameters we applied, that they fit one of those categories, that they had adjacent properties, again, touching shared property lines. Or we were also looking at concentration. We may be able to look at backing off of that a little bit, but if there, you know, if there's a development that has 6 houses in it and they're really kind of clustered close together, but they're not adjacent, we wanted to just examine that and look at that risk, because we weren't really sure which way the state would go. So we've got 37% of locations that we've identified that may be co-located. And the real intention here, you know, we've talked with, over the last few months, with executive directors, very experienced executive directors, and just last Friday, you know, we had another discussion with them about it, and they said, well, you know, I realized I'm not going to have to address the big thing I thought I was going to have to address, which is relocating residential settings, because I realize now that we can mitigate those risks in place by looking at community access, by looking at how we deliver services, how we provide choice and access within the day where folks provide services. And so those kind of messages and that kind of reality is, I think, settling in and hopefully calming, and as it should be, because we have been speaking for several months now about kind of backing off of that. CMS guidance is a little softer. So I guess that's my point. You know, we're going to be mitigating the risk by proactive and intentional planning. Obviously, this is a big endeavor. And there is a difference between having less change and more change based on where homes are located and how programming is being provided. So if you're in a rural location, obviously we've got to analyze it and address it differently. And then if you're in more of a town location, like, some of us are from Columbia, Forest Acres area, if you live behind Trent Plaza, you've got a little bit more access to walking places, maybe transportation, those sorts of things, possible employment. So I'm glad to take questions, but I will just end with this note. As you get questions as commissioners and you hear comments, please send them our way, because we want to intervene and we want to know how we can help. But I think I ran across this quote the other day: with change, there's no growth in the comfort zone and no comfort in the growth zone. So our providers agree. The HCBS final rule preserves rights and would create a life for people with disabilities that they deserve, and it's the right thing to do. But it also creates a lot of discomfort adjusting to
Eva, I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay, we were talking about Pat had given us a summary, and Pat, you did a really good job of putting together a plan with a strategy and the milestones, and all those things that kind of gave us a direction. But there is something in the plan that I would like to address, and it is the approach with Alliance and the 8 standards that were added to Alliance this year that have to do with final rules.
Mm-hmm.
So, in looking at that, when we put in, okay, so here's what happened. Oconee County had a site survey from Alliance. They were cited for that, having a fence at a house. And so they have a seasoned executive director in Oconee County who said, I'm not taking it down. But let's just assume for a minute that you had a new executive director who is an overachiever and a perfectionist and wants to do well and doesn't want it on the report, and they take it down. And somebody gets hurt. I believe they would point back, I'm no defense attorney, Gary, but I believe they would point back to the licensing standards and say, here, they told me to. And they'd be right.
I'll take it. Yeah, Vicki, I think whenever you roll something out, you're gonna have a few blips. The reason we put the standards in the licensing was because anybody that wants to start a new house, they'll look at the standards and they'll know, hey, unless you have a reason, you can't have an institutional fence. You shouldn't be adjacent to one another. And so it was really designed for licensing new houses. Now we're in this in-between stage. So we were in the catch-22. We made a determination if people are going to look to license house, if they want to license a house or start up a house, we need to give them the criteria. And we told Alliant that when you run across these, just note them, and they will not be in the report. So you did get someone on the front end who was obviously not looped into the noting phase, and even there's some notion of why even note it. And we had a discussion. And my opinion is, having a fence is not a co-location issue. It's an indicator of institutions. A fence is bad, not by itself. A 6-foot fence with barbed wire and a lock is bad. So I think from a regular perspective, basically you can have fences. The burden is don't be institutional. If you have fences, if you're going to lock it, you have to have some mitigation as to why you're locking it. So a lot of these things are, if you read it on its face, you can come to those conclusions. And part of our job is to communicate, and I thank you for bringing that up, Vicki, it's just the reasonableness of these approaches and the reasonableness of the criteria. No one criteria is going to drive it.
I understand what you're saying, and I mean, I have fence every day. I don't think it looks institutional. But the point of the whole matter is communication is the responsibility of the communicator. And when we conflate the licensing standards with the data collection for final rule fantasy, then what we're doing is saying, okay, we want you to pay attention to these medication standards, but these over here that we stuck in on final rule to gather data, we don't need you to pay so much attention to those. So we have to be careful that when we communicate to providers, in particular about things that that have to do with safety, which this does, then, and some of the other things do in there too, of the 8. But anyway, you know, we have to be very clear. This is exactly what we want. Because the HUD fiasco is a good example. We tell the providers to do it, they do it, and then we punish them for doing it that way. I mean, you know, at some point in time.
How have we punished the HUD person?
Well, the whole payback situation.
Oh, issue, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Not final rule related, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can debate that too, but that's what happened. The thing about it is that when you put this in licensing standards, you are saying to people, we're not going to judge your performance on it. We're not going to say to you that you've got to write a plan of correction. But that is, number one, it's not going to hold up as a defense for us, because if in the licensing standards, is that really where we need to gather this data from? If you've got this PCG people, or is it PGC or whatever it is?
Yeah.
PGC?
Yeah, when this issue first came up, let me clarify, correct me if I'm wrong, it was this power cut. And since some of this come up, we went back into the regulation. If we have not changed it, we should. We were going to set a date, like, look, as of this date, any existing house of this date, this is not applicable to. That was our mistake. Any house after this date, if you have these types of fences, absent compelling reasons, you're not going to have them. So I think that is the kind of fine tuning we're going to be doing for the next 12 months. And
While we're fine tuning it, I just want to make sure that we're not sending mixed signals and that nobody is going to do anything that is premature based on something that in most likelihood is never going to happen with this final rule stuff. They can't. It's cost prohibitive. They got to have to grandfather in a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, you know, so while we're working on all that, I want to make sure people are safe. And if we set the standards in a licensing requirement indicating that we have all agreed that this is the thing you need to do, and I'm not in agreement to that, then I think we may have run the risk, the very real risk, of people trying to excel by following something that may not make a whole lot of sense. I just don't think the licensing standards are the right place for those things right now. So what is your challenge in taking those out?
I will take a look at it, Vicki. It's a catch-22. If we take them out, somebody wants to build a house this year, then we don't have a standard to tell them what to do. So I think, let me see if I can meet both needs at the same time and with the wording of the standard.
I think we
have changed the standards.
Yeah, I think we've changed, or we were going to add a clarification statement in. I'll just add 2 points to that. Any information about those 8 areas that you're hearing reports of from initial Alliant reviews, so there's like a preliminary list of things shared, but 30 days later, a final report's issued. So those were just in there. It's not a report. It's not a citation. It was just kind of a note. And the note.
Go ahead.
Oh, and the note now clearly says, this is for information, compliance is this date. But in the actual CMS required state transition plan, we had to review directives and standards and make them compliant with the final rule and agree that no new properties would come online that did not meet those requirements.
You know, y'all license all new facilities, and in that licensing process, you can address new requirements all you want to. But we are running a very real risk when we are trying to put things in there of people saying that, you know, that this is what we want, that this is what we expect, that this is, you know, for an existing house, and it is not. And it probably never will be. And so, you know, I think that one of our major problems has been and continues to be the way we communicate our expectations to providers. We should be saying, you can go this far and no further. We should say it decisively. We should be clear about it. We should train in it that way. But when we conflate issues like this and we stick it in there and we say, well, you won't get in trouble. You don't have to do a plan of correction on this, but we're going to leave it in there. I mean, why don't we just swallow hard and say we put it in there prematurely because that's what happened.
Well, it isn't in the report, so
Okay.
But we can talk offline.
I think this is
I'll look at it again, but I thought we'd fix that.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll fix. we'll address that issue.
We need to address that. Thank you very much, Susan.
Thank you.
And Pat's going to address it and get back with you about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Pat, you
I'll
want?
make it quick. I know we got more important things than these reports.
He's going to do the case management Medicaid reimbursement,
It
right?
was important to give you the case management update because it's going to be an issue for the next 4 or 5 months. And we have to manage this issue. Like most things, I agree with Vicki, you've got to communicate. And if you don't have some baseline understanding, people will be talking to you, and all of a sudden we get sideways with small little issues. So you need to have a framework to understand what's going on. It started, like most things, 5 years ago. HHS was going to move to a market rate for case management. And at that time, other state agencies, we all had different rates, and said we're all going to go to this rate. It was going to be a 2.5-year implementation phase, and we were going to step down from wherever we were, because at the time, we all had different cost-based rates. And of course, we had the highest rate, the way we do our costs. And so they were going to walk us down over 2.5 years, and we got going on that to the first 75 percentile, and then the issue came up, and rightfully so, that waiver case management is substantially different than other types of case management. So every other agency that's doing Medicaid case management walked down to the current $80 an hour face-to-face, $60 an hour for everything else. We stayed at a higher rate because we were waiting for us to build the waiver case management guidelines, which would give us more billing options, and we have a little bit more depth in our case management for waivers. Well, that decision was made in mid-2014, and it never got anywhere. It's been languishing for over 3 years, and HHS, with a new director, they're closing out old state plan amendments, and they're cleaning up this state plan amendment, which said back in 2012 we're going to do it. Well, it hadn't been approved. They have to get it approved. So they basically said the time is now to pick up where we left off in 14, which is we have to start marching toward a market rate. And they did a cost study, and people may disagree with some of the aspects of the cost study, but they did a rate study. And the rate study turned out to be $25.15, $100 an hour face-to-face, $60 an hour for everything else. And they said, start moving toward that rate. And talking to them over a couple of times, they realized that we have to have a longer runway before we flip this switch, because right now we're in the band system. And one of the issues with the band system is we pay a monthly rate of $138 per consumer to a case manager. And they get it whether they do nothing or 5 hours a month. And the idea is to have a capitated model where they can have flexibility in what they do. But they do still have to bill, because their billings go to Medicaid. Medicaid pays the money to us, and we hope we balance out. And we're pretty close to balancing out. A little bit short, but within the realm of, I'd say, tolerance within the band system. Well, now, with going to this rate, what's happening is instead of us being paid a rate of $160 an hour face-to-face and $156 an hour for everything else but face-to-face. And again, these are cost-based rates, not relation to market rates. Our rate reimbursements are going down, which means our revenue to pay them is going down, which means two things. Either their money goes down or their billings have to go up. And what we learned in 14 and what we've learned now is the band system has a way of, the billing patterns are just not as robust as if it was fee-for-service. It's just human nature. So what we need to do as a delivery system is we need to go back to where we're in 14. Because in 14, we had the same situation where we were stepping it down, and what they did was we built reports so the providers could see how their employees were performing. We sent out comparative reports, they did training, and their capacity to bill went up. We just got to get that habit back going again so that before they switch, we'll have a higher billings with a lower rate. And now the question is, where's it going to come out? And that is a question mark that we have to run down because we met with providers on 2 occasions. And this is a significant issue because we got to be in a position that when we flip that switch, that we are at or near revenue neutral. And that's going to be a challenge because case managers, you heard the report earlier, the case manager population between conflict-free case, we heard it today, conflict-free case management. We need to bring resolution to that because it is creating uncertainty into the system. We got the rate issue. And so you have all these factors, and if you drop that rate and they come out on the low side, it could just have more effects to what I would call, they're the bloodstream that makes us all work. So we have to make sure that the case management population is healthy, and here's a system where it's jeopardizing it. And I think the silver lining in all this is the rate study is starting, and that should be our first item on the agenda to get that rate re-examined so that at some future point in the not too distant future, we have a 2018 rate versus a 2013-14 rate. So it's one of those things where we got to manage our way through it. And so we're taking 2 tracks. The one track is feedback reports, measuring billing capacity, and training to get the billings to what I would call a normal rate. And then at the same time, we've got to look at the productivity rates for waiver case management, because there's something going on in there that is really inhibiting an ability to bill at a high rate. And I'll just give you a couple of slides to give you a view of the money situation. This right here is not the money situation. What this is, 100% is, this is the money situation. At 100% is the band rate. That's $138 a day. If you took each bar as a provider, if the provider took today's billing rates and multiplied it by the upcoming market rates of 25 and 15, that would be their percentage of their current band rate. So what you see here is we have one provider. If you flip the switch, we'll lose a little bit of dollars. The average is right down here, right around 50%. So basically you have to get your billing up 50% in order to get close to break even. And you can say, how do you do that? Well, I think the current billing rate from the early numbers we have is then 30-ish, 25, 30%. Billing's low. So we have room to get up there. So with this math, I don't want to where you're at today. I just want to tell you the situation we're in, what we're doing to address it, and in a month or 2 months, we'll be in a better position to see what kind of risk we're in. But we got to start getting the billing normalizing before we can really judge the impact. And so far, I think, met with providers, I thought they would be a little bit more, believe me, they were concerned, but it was just, they've been through this before. And so they really had an idea as to what we need to do. So I think give us month and month, I think we'll have a report in a shorter version, give you some numbers, but we got to manage that to the finish line. Any questions?
I have one. Have y'all looked at, and I'm sure you probably have, but have y'all looked at the requirement of DDSN that you're requiring case managers, or requiring of case managers that are not billable? Because that also has to be reconciled.
Go ahead, Susan. I didn't.
Yes, we have a list from the South Carolina Human Service Providers Association Case Management Subgroup from a couple of years ago, and we've reviewed that list internally. Some of those items are obsolete at this point. Some of them could be classified as assigned by the board or the provider, not DDSN, and then others we're going to try to share back on if at all possible. But we are analyzing that and then also providing guidance, which we have not historically done in the past, trying to really define what is reportable and what is not reportable so that there's more clarity, which could increase reportable units.
Okay. I mean, you just really need to take a robust look at all requirements.
Yeah.
I agree.
And decrease as many of them as you can that are not billable.
Okay. Any
So-
other questions?
So as I read the graph, we've got one provider out there that's doing 90% roughly. I mean,
Their current billing rate,
Yeah,
if they convert it, they would break even.
right.
Yeah.
It's doable, I guess.
Yeah, it's, okay, so somebody's doing it.
Somebody's doing it.
Somebody to do it.
How are we making, we were just talking about this, how are we spreading that knowledge? How do we get person on the left end of the graph to talk to the person on the right end of the graph to get their number up
I
to?
think Vicki is hitting on the
Yeah.
point where the waiver criteria has to be very skinny down and streamlined.
Yeah.
And I think it got weighed down in the past with whatever was going on in 2014. There was a lot of idiosyncratic stuff going on, and that's not the case today. So I think we can get a very streamlined waiver case management process. And I was a little bit surprised in the room at the variability of people's confidence in billing. And I'm thinking, why is it that hard? I think I conclude that we have very, very honest people that are very concerned about, every, almost a letter of the law. And part of that is back to giving more guidance. And I think what I concluded is we got to give people more examples and vignettes so that we're not putting something out narratively that people may misinterpret or extrapolate upon, but give them enough detail that they feel confident they fit in that window, and so that they can build what is rightfully theirs. And I've talked to two case manager EDs that are full-time, that's all they do. And they have very rigorous ways of doing it. I just think historically, the board's been conservative because of the ban.
Yeah.
It allowed them to be conservative. And I think now we just have to really hone our common understanding so that we build the same way.
Yeah, and I mean, I just think, again, traditionally it's, and when I get out and I talk to the extra directors, one thing that I think we need to work on is spreading knowledge. If you've got somebody who's doing it right, how do we propagate that knowledge throughout our system? Because we've got one group that's doing it really right.
Yeah.
And so they understand that this is how we do the billing, and it comes out. And then we got somebody who, again, for whatever reason, maybe they're being very conservative, hasn't worried about that because it's not been a fact. It's all, the number has always kind of come in regardless of what they bill out. We got to get the person on the right side of the graph together with the person on the left side of the graph to talk.
Okay.
And there are those out there. Other questions?
Who is it, by the way, that's on the board that's doing it right?
I couldn't tell you, and I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Y'all ready to go on to the budget
Sure.
update?
Budget update, I'll make it very quick. As you're aware, on the House side, they approved the $11.3 million for the dollar increase as well as pay compression.
Yeah, I know.
And they also approved the $500,000 for the Greenwood Genetics. What the Senate did was they approved those as well, and they added another $500,000 for increased access to post-acute rehabilitation. And they also gave us $700,000 for the waiver, which had to do with $300,000 for the HACCP pest control and $400,000 for environmental modifications.
Any questions? Anything else?
No.
How about the financial update?
I'm pinch hitting for Lisa today. I gave her a mulligan just to warm up in her position.
All right, next month, we want you now.
If I could, I tell you, the chart that says fiscal year 17-18 legislative authorization, the number-oriented chart, the Excel, just look at that. And this will cover the big picture. This is new. I think some of the
I gotta get better glasses to read.
yeah, some of the commissioners have got it, but the reason I did this was because I'm trying to answer your questions. As fiduciaries, you want to know certain things. And what I did with the document that we had for, which is our budget, we used to give you the budget. The problem with the budget is we have $72 million of unauthorized revenue in there. So it's better is to bring it down to our spending plan. And the reason our budget is higher is when we get a budget every year, we add in the best of all worlds, if we match Medicaid to some incredibly high number, we would need that capacity not to violate our authorization. So they give us a high number, and we probably should drop that in the future so it's not misleading. But at the end of the day, when we do our spending plan, we look at our state match, and we come up with a spending plan. In this case, it was $681 million in our budget. And you can see expenses year-to-date and balance. And as in my position, I want to know, are we going to land the plane without having a cash deficit this year? And the answer is, answer is yes. I'll give you the early answer is yes. But when it comes to the expenditure side, we are so contract driven that every year we meet our marks every quarter because it's so predictable. So there's really no risk of us overshooting the runway of having too many expenses. Unlike most state agencies where they're just basically, you get your budget, you spend it throughout the year, and they're always worried about running out of money. In our case, we know exactly how much we're going to spend based on our contracts and history. Our problem, our concern when it gets into, at the end of the year of cash flow, is watching our revenue stream. And
Pat, I have a problem with that. I think we need to have more things to do. And so we don't know exactly, I hate to say, when you tell me we're spending the exact same thing every year, I mean, in there, we have so many more things we need to do. So see if you can get some more money. I want things to improve, you know, like.
I would agree, but speaking practically
speaking. I know.
This organization is going to improve by looking at what we have.
I understand.
And redirecting, reallocating, and rethinking. That's how we're going to get better.
Okay.
You know, let me just tell you, Pat, this is a great report. It has almost everything we need. It's like a screenshot of what we need to know every month. So it's really, congratulations. I think you're on to something here.
Thank you. And I'll jump to the cash flow issue. And we spent a lot of time on that yesterday. And again, every month we'll report it, and every week we're looking at it, because, and I give a lot of credit to this institution has been very demanding. Look, we don't want to have a penny left over.
Good.
At the same time, it creates a lot of end of the year fine tuning to make sure we land the plane without going negative. So, but right now our predictable expenditures are 137 million, which I think we feel very confident about. Our revenue stream, we're expecting 97 million. It nets out, we are 5 million to the good. And from my perspective, our risk is our revenue stream of $97 million, and we have 5 million in cash. So we could be short 5 or 6% and still be okay. And then from the fall acquisition, we have $6 million in capital accounts. So if something really crazy happened, we would have 6 million. So I'll look at it right now in very general terms. 97 million, unless something happens, we have a good 10% cushion downside before we have a problem. So right now I feel okay, but I still feel there's a lot of risk and variability in the revenue stream. So we're going to be conservative at least through June 1st with what we're spending. And then if we feel like we're on track, then we can open up at the year end and spend every dime.
Good. All right. Can we talk about the Coastal Center?
Yeah, I do need a motion on that.
Yes.
This is a.
Tell us about it.
This was at the Coastal Center, having drainage problems. In a large variety of areas. You have drainage on the a lack of grading. You have puddles. You have broken sidewalks. It's just a lot of drainage issues. So we went out and got an estimate, and then we got a bid. And the low bid to do all our work was $400,000. The dilemma with that was our money that went through the bid process to be approved for capital expenditures was $250,000. So right away, our original estimate got blown by the bid. So we had to take the low bid and we had to pick out what we needed most to fit within our $250,000 budget. And what we did was we selected every item, 1 through 24, that total $205,000 as what we want to get approved today for us to actually accept the bid and execute it and spend the money. And then next year, we'll come back and do the second phase with another pit that's in the process this year.
Y'all have any questions on this? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Great. Thank you, Pat. David Goodell, I hope this isn't your last time up there.
Morning.
Morning.
Well, it is my pleasure to be with you this morning to talk about one of our system's greatest assets, our staff. Specifically, I want to talk about our regional center staff. We've got about 1,800 staff working at our 5 regional centers, and these staff provide a broad array of medical, educational, therapeutic, and personal care services to about 670 individuals that live in one of our centers, and they provide those services 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It's a very, very time-consuming effort. And the people that they support in our centers are individuals that have some of the more complicated needs of all the individuals that we serve in our system. Now, our regional center staff, they are very dedicated to the people that they serve. I'm reminded of a quote by Winston Churchill, who once keenly noted that you earn a living through what you get, but you make a life through what you give. And by that measure, our regional center staff have a lot to be proud of because they are extremely generous in their giving to the folks that live at the regional centers. And I do not think that I would get any opposition from some of the family members here if I refer to our regional center staff as heroes. They really do. They are the backbone of our service delivery system. Now, our staff are generally very committed. However, there are some staff that really go above and beyond the call. They really distinguish themselves. They make a bigger difference than their average peer. And each of our regional centers has a variety of ways that they recognize and acknowledge the extra effort that those staff put out. And the most important form of recognition that the centers have, we acknowledge or we identify an employee of the year for each of our centers every year. And these are the individuals that truly make a difference in terms of improving the outcome of the lives of the folks that we support. And today, we're going to get the pleasure of meeting all of the employee of the years from each of our 5 centers. And we are also going to get the pleasure to meet the individual that has been designated as a DDSN Employee of the Year, which is picked from one of the 5 regional center Employees of the Year. And the selection of the DDSN Employee of the Year has been made by a distinguished group of regional center staff under the guidance of Ms. Lamont. And as you'll come to realize as you meet these individuals, Employees of the Year, this selection committee had a very tough choice to make. All of those employees are truly outstanding. However, the individual that has been recognized as or will be recognized as the DDSN Employee of the Year is that individual that has traits and characteristics that are most consistent with the mission of this agency. And without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Lamont, and she's going to introduce you to our facility administrators from each of our centers and their respective Employees of the Year.
Good afternoon. At this time, I would like to present the PD Center, John Hitchman, Facility Administrator, and Jerome Cooks, the Employee of the Year.
Well, good morning. Good morning. First, let me thank y'all for inviting us again this year. This is always a great honor to bring a couple of our distinguished employees and introduce them to you and tell you a little bit about them. And of course, remind you, like David said, about not just these employees, but there's a tremendous amount of individuals who give 100% every day to care for our individuals. Mr. Cooks works at the PD Center. He's been there just short of 20 years. He works in our dietary department. A couple points before I introduce him, but I had to do a little arm twisting to get him here today. He was kind of shy. I wasn't sure he was going to make it, but I'm very, very happy that he's here. The other thing is I'd be lying if I didn't do a little lobbying for him to win this award for the PD Center. And the reason I did that, for the last couple of years, I've been directly supervising the two dietary departments at the PD Center and the Sleepy Center. So I got to know the individuals really well, the staff that work there. And the one thing that's amazing is just to watch what they do on a daily basis without a lot of direction. And it's just assumed that they're going to accomplish this immense task every day of feeding all of our individuals. Most of them are on some sort of altered diet, a special diet everybody has a host of special needs that they have. And they do it every day basically to perfection. We rarely make a mistake in that area. They do it on Christmas, Thanksgiving, when we're home enjoying our families. They're there at 6 a.m. doing this. So it was really, I thought it was really the time that someone in that department was recognized for all their hard work and their work behind the scenes that we often don't recognize enough. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mr. Cooks and excellent representative for Employee of the Year for the PD Center for 2017. Want to say anything?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wait,
Yeah, resolution.
I have a resolution, whereas Jerome Cooks of Florence has been a valued employee of the South Carolina Department of Disabilities and Special Needs PD Regional Center for nearly 20 years, and whereas he serves as a food service specialist within the dietary department, and whereas he is genuinely kind, friendly, and caring, that is always willing to help others, and whereas he completes his work with the same consistency and accuracy on a daily basis, and whereas he is a team player and does his part to ensure that the residents receive their services they need and deserve, and whereas he exemplifies the commitment it takes to work in the dietary department and does so with a humble attitude and excellent work ethic, and whereas he was selected 2017 Employee of the Year for PD Regional Center and represents the very best qualities of our agency, now therefore be it resolved that the South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs and its department express deep appreciation to Jerome Cooks for his contributions and wish him continued success in all future undertakings.
Okay. Next, we have Winton Center Randy Davis, Facility Administrator, and Jacqueline Williams.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Wonderful to be here with you this morning and to present the Winton Center Employee of the Year. It is my honor to present to you Jackie. Jackie has almost 34 years at Winton.
Wow.
Wow. I've known Jackie for not all of those years, but it has been a delight to work with her. I have seen her working with some very challenging individuals. And many wonderful things about Jackie, but what I have seen is something that you see now. She has a wonderful smile. The individuals appreciate that, I know. She has a wonderful calming demeanor. She's very reassuring to the clients that she serves, and I know she enjoys that. I can see that in her, and the staff that work with her also see that and appreciate that. Jackie is often in an in-charge position on the unit and does that very well. Demonstrates great leadership. It is certainly a pleasure to have her with us. The one thing I am sad to report is that Jackie is deciding to retire. We've discussed that, and I've tried my best to stay, so we certainly will miss her. The clients will certainly miss her.
But I understand why she's doing it. It's time for some new activities, new things. Jackie has a wonderful husband, Tim, 2 sons, twins, Jermel and Tyrell, and a grandson, Tristan, whom she finds great delight in spending time with. And will be doing more of that in the future, along with caring for her aging mother, who's 93.
Oh, my goodness.
So Jackie has a lot on her plate, for which she will certainly be missed.
Oh, thank you. Jackie, you want to say anything?
Yes.
Love to hear from you.
I've enjoyed every minute, every day, every hour, every year of my job. My goal was to get up, make someone happy, make someone smile, just being there, keeping them safe. And I've enjoyed that. And if I could do it 34 years again, I would.
Great, thank you.
Jackie, congratulations. We have a resolution for you. Whereas Jacqueline P. Williams of Clinton has been a valued employee of the South Carolina Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Whitten Regional Center for 34 years. And whereas she serves as a Human Services Assistant 2B and is often tagged as the in-charge staff for first shift. And whereas she is an excellent leader and motivates those working for her and with her. And whereas she leads by example and always displays appropriate interactions with consumers. And whereas she shows an exceptional level of respect, care, and concern for residents in Unit 102 and always has a smile to share with everyone. And whereas she strives each day to enhance the lives of the consumers and help make Unit 102 a comforting, thriving home. And whereas she was selected 2017 Employee of the Year for Whitten Regional Center and represents the very best qualities of our agency. Now therefore be it resolved that the South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs and its department expresses its deep appreciation to Jacqueline P. Williams for her contributions and wish her continued success in all future undertakings and retirement. Congratulations.
Thank you. Coastal Center, Facility Administrator Becky Hill, and Employee of the Year James Moses.
Good morning to all.
Good morning.
So it's my great pleasure to present James Moses as our Employee of the Year for Coastal Center. And this is a fine man here. I'm just going to tell you, he is so respectful, so humble. And he's actually worked for our agency for 10 years. But I'm going to tell you a story right before that. His former supervisor, who retired as the chief AOD, actually wrote most for the nomination. And something really stood out to me. Actually, there was a couple things, but this thing, just from the very beginning, he has a heart for the human service field. When he was at Winthrop College, he had an internship. He didn't have a car, and he selected to work with an organization that supported people with special needs. And he walked every day to that internship, regardless of the weather, never missed a day, always on time, and stayed for however long the need needed to be met that day. So his heart was there from the very beginning. And he ended up getting a part-time job while he was in college. But when he graduated from Winthrop, he actually went to work at SCDDSN Center as an HSA staff, and then he was promoted to a shift supervisor. And then we had an opening for an AOD position at Coastal Center. And so we were fortunate to get James as an AOD, and he has fulfilled that role for probably at least 8 years. And he from day one, when I met him, I knew there was something special. And he hasn't proven me wrong.
Right.
He has the respect of every person who lives at the facility, the staff, the parents who are here today. We also have his twin sister, Jamaica, here. But what he does every day to support people who live at the facility is phenomenal. He was an AOD because he's now my chief AOD. But if there was a housekeeping need, he would take care of it. If the direct care staff needed help, he'd take care of it. If he didn't know what the needs were for departments, he would meet with different supervisors. He would give extra time by coming in to support his other coworkers. And so, with just great pleasure, I present James Moses, and although his name is Moses, he's more like a Joshua. We didn't get it done.
It's a great privilege to be here today, and this thankful for the opportunity. Thank you all.
I have a resolution for you, James. Whereas James B. Whereas James B. Moses of Charleston has been a valued employee of the South Carolina Department of Disabilities and Special Needs for 9 years, including 8 years at the Coastal Regional Center. And whereas he served as an administrative officer of the day for a second shift and was recently promoted to chief administrative officer of the day due to his outstanding work ethic and character. And whereas he has trained and helped develop at least 9 other AODs during his tenure. And whereas humble, consistent, honest, trustworthy, and dependable are just a few words to describe him. And whereas he is a self-sacrificing leader to all his coworkers, going the extra mile to give up weekends off and work different shifts to assist them with their concerns beyond the job. And whereas he has earned the trust, respect, and admiration of the consumers, their parents, coworkers, and staff department heads. And whereas he was selected the 2017 Employee of the Year for Coastal Regional Center and represents the very best qualities of our agency. Now therefore be it resolved that the South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs and its department express deep appreciation to James B. Moses for his contributions, and we wish him continued success in all future undertakings.
Thank you. Okay. Next is Salibi Center, Facility Administrator John Hitchnigan, and Employee of the Year, Janice Dixon.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Janice Dixon. She's a 27-and-a-half-year veteran of the Salibi Center. When I read that earlier, it hit me that I might be having a conversation with her 6 months from now. I hope not, but I'm close to that 28-year mark. Ms. Dixon was nominated for Employee of the Month this past year by her supervisor. They've worked together for many years, and she possesses all the qualities that you've heard today already, but she's humble, she's non-assuming, she's there for the benefit of the individuals. She takes great pride in how her individuals look, how others perceive them. I always make sure that they have everything that they need. If we could start cloning employees at DDSN, I'm a perfect candidate to start that process. But the best compliment I think that I can give her also is that she kind of embodies the Salibi Center. For those of you who have been to the center, that's the kind of person that you meet when you walk through that center. The whole facility is filled with people that are very non-assuming, there for the right reason. They care deeply about the individuals that they serve there and do just an excellent job. So it's my pleasure to introduce her as the unanimous, too. It was a unanimous vote and for her to receive the Employee of the Year for the Salibi Center. Janice.
Thank you. It was
pleasure to work for DDSN for 27 years. I really enjoy it. I really love the individual, and they gave me a learning experience, what they taught me. And it's just a great experience.
Thank you so much.
I have a resolution for you. Whereas Janice Dixon of Darlington has been a valued employee of the South Carolina Department of Disabilities and Special Needs, Salibi Regional Center for 27 years, and whereas she serves as a human services assistant too, and whereas she is a quiet yet determined hard worker, and whereas her compassion and concern for the consumers she serves on a daily basis causes one to go into a feel-good party. And whereas she is a team player that does her part to make a difference in the quality of life for all the consumers at Salibi Center, and whereas she is dedicated to providing excellent care to the consumers, and whereas she was selected 2017 Employee of the Year for Salibi Regional Center and represents the very best qualities of our agency. Now therefore be it resolved that the South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs and its department express deep appreciation to Janice Dixon for her contributions and wish her continued success in all future undertakings.
Okay, last but not least, Midland Center, Angela Wright, facility administrator, and Virginia Curtin is the employee of the year.
It goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Thanks for saving the best for last. Okay, I present to you Miss Virginia Curtin. If I say Kirkin or Kirkling, I mean Kirkton. It's just a different name. Miss Virginia Curtin, she's a nurse at Midland Center. She has been there for 33 plus years, some other years that's not recorded. However, she's been in the Sycamore residence for 31 years. So she's truly, truly the leader, the mother, the caregiver, the nurturer of that building. She's definitely appreciated by the staff and the consumers. Ms. Curtin is a true professional. She takes her job very seriously. She's a very quiet lady. She walks very soft, but her job, she does not play with. She's very serious about the consumers and the care that is given to them. She is undoubtedly provides excellent care for each and every one in her building, plus the other building. She's worked in every building throughout her 33 years. However, she's, again, been in this building for 31. So her compassion, caring, devoted, kind, patient, understanding, dependable, reliable personality is just a magnet to all. She has a great rapport with all the consumers, and she's a true asset to the consumers and Midland Center as a whole. Throughout all her dedicated years, she does have a little bit of time to extend herself to her family. She has 3 now young adult children, and she loves her animals, especially her pig. She's a remarkable person and an awesome staff. I present to you Nurse Curtin.
I just want to say it's been a great honor to have been chosen, and I've enjoyed working at Midlands for these past 30 plus years.
Thank you.
I have the honor of presenting your resolution. Whereas Virginia S. Curtin of Columbia has been a valued employee of the South Carolina Department of Disabilities and Special Needs, Midlands Regional Center for over 32 years, and whereas she serves as a licensed practical nurse 2 for the Sycamore residents and is appreciated by the staff, supervisors, and consumers, and whereas she is compassionate, caring, and a devoted nurse who provides excellent care to the consumers of Sycamore, and whereas she is dependable, reliable, and takes pride in her work, offering suggestions on behalf of consumers and willingly adjusts her schedule to meet their needs, and whereas she has established a great rapport with all the consumers at Midlands, not just the ones at Sycamore, And whereas she was selected for Employee of the Month for July 2017, then received the 2017 Employee of the Third Quarter, and whereas she was selected the 2017 Employee of the Year for Midlands Regional Center and represents the very best qualities of our agency. Now therefore be it resolved that the South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs and its department express deep appreciation to Virginia Curtin for her contributions and wish her continued success in all future undertakings.
Okay. It is my absolute pleasure to announce the Employee of the Year on behalf of DDSN 2017, Mr. Moses.
Disabilities by the South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs. Thank you.
Wait, before you start, here's the money.
Wow. First and foremost, give honor and glory to God. Without him, there's no me. So I just want to thank the selection committee, my fellow nominees for all the regional centers. I think anyone would tell you it's an individual award, but it's a big team behind me that really helps make this happen. I tell any staff that works at Coastal Center, we're a part of something that's bigger than us, and it's the residents that we serve. I said I want to thank my leadership team, my facility administrator, Becky Hill, my former supervisor, Mr. Wallace Hunter. He's been in my corner from day one. I appreciate it. Twin sister from making the drive from Greenville. And Rest Association, the Johnsons. Thank you for your always encouraging words on a daily basis. And just from everybody in this room, it's about who we serve. Yes. Just remember that every day. Thank you.
Wow.
So we are going to I need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
So moved. Okay. On our next,
Yeah,
okay.
you gotta do what it's for.
I have to say, for contractual matters. To discuss contractual. I don't know.